Not a matter of if, but when crisis will rock your world. I'm Roshini Rajkumar, crisis strategist, licensed attorney, and host of The Crisis Files. My crisis squad and I constantly look for solutions to major issues of the day. Crisis Squad member Dr. Abdul Omari is back in studio with me. He's the founder of AMO Enterprise. He focuses on forging leaders who value inclusion and belonging as cornerstones of success. Abdul is here for the case file I call Workplace Balance. The hot topics of work from home, hybrid workplaces, and return to the office remain 5 years after the world got blindsided by COVID-19. We learned some important lessons. We also lost connections. How will we move forward now that we know what we know? Abdul, let's break this down.
It's true. It continues to be a topic of consideration 5 years later. What we do know is that the desire for some remote or hybrid opportunity is not going away. And we also know that it continues to be revisited from employers to think about a whole number of things, whether it's why do we have this space if no one's using it and we're paying for it? Or how do we build the connections that we felt like we had before everything went remote? And so from both angles, I think this topic is going to continue to be at the forefront. I think about it in terms of how we can be flexible in some instances and be practical in a lot of instances when we are making decisions as people leaders, as employers, to decide how we make these decisions about whether or not groups of people or individuals should and can work remotely.
And certainly people who listen to this case file, Workplace Balance, even employees can learn from what you're saying. So as you've taught this and continue to teach this around the country, there are three words that I love, these brackets that we're going to get into today: context, relationships, and consideration. Let's talk about context. What do you mean by context?
So I think it's important for employers when they're thinking about remote work or hybrid work, they have to know the context of the roles. And then they also have to know the context of the individuals that are in those roles. And that takes a number of questions, that takes a number of thoughtful reflection, conversations, not only about what a job entails, about individual situations and circumstances that might benefit from a hybrid work opportunity or from 100% remote work, and that might benefit from being in the office.
So some are obvious, some are more nuanced. A paramedic can't work from home.
Correct. Yep. Police officer can't work from home, right? A machinist who needs the tools at the manufacturing plant can't work from home. Now, if you're talking about someone who's a marketer, like my wife and my sister, maybe they can. Matter of fact, they both pretty much 100% work remote, right? My sister lives in Atlanta. She works for Target. She comes in when she needs to. She flies to India when she needs to. And that's a form of in-person work when she needs to go meet with her team in India.
And that's one of the beauties of the pandemic era is we actually upped our game on the digital, upped our game on the ability to work from really anywhere. I don't even want to call it remote because she works for a Minneapolis headquartered company that's a global company. She might be living in Atlanta but flying to India. There was a time that even if she had worked every day in the office, she wouldn't have been easily flying to India. So that's a positive of this kind of new world order when it comes to work, hybrid, balance, office, at home, whatever it is.
Absolutely. And there's two other things in here. Even the marketer who can do their job at their desk pretty much whenever they need to. There's also other risks that might come in. Security risks, right? My partner, like I said, she's a marketer. She works from home. She works at NMDP, right? They're medical. You may not be able to go internationally and work because of certain risks of data and people's personal information and things
all
like that,
with
right?
the cyber threats that
Exactly,
are going on.
right? So there's all these nuanced considerations that I think we really need to be thoughtful about. And the other thing that I'll say to your point is, yes, we upped our game to work remotely and to be able to move around and travel, and we're thinking differently about it. And telework is not new. It started with a little phone or speaker in the middle of the conference room and somebody was calling from somewhere else, right?
Yeah, right. Long before any of us had cell phones, we were getting telemarketing calls.
Exactly, right?
On the landline.
And so it's certainly shifted, and don't be necessarily afraid of it because it has been happening for a really long time.
So it's really looking for opportunities. So we kind of do that context check. What's the role? What are the realities of that role? What are the risks of that role for both employee and employer, for clients, for vendors? And then the retention piece. I think that's really important, Dr. Omari, that you get into helping employees and employers really understand retention is a reality of today's workplace for all kinds of people.
Yeah, I mean, retention is huge. It's also really moves into this second bucket of relationships, right? And so if you feel like you have a grasp on the context of the roles that people are playing and you're moving into learning more about them, right? Somebody has an elderly parent that they're helping to take care of in the home. Remote work, hybrid work might be phenomenal for them. And then when you start to learn about those individual contexts, now we can build the relationship.
And the relationship helps to value that individual.
Exactly.
The expertise they bring to the table, as well as maybe that institutional knowledge. Maybe the first 10 years of their career, they were able to easily come into the office, but now they have this elderly parent they need to care for. Their brain and their talents haven't changed, but their family focus may have changed. Do we let go of that person just because of that, or do we evolve and shift so we can keep them? Because having to hire new employees and onboard them is an expensive process.
It's very expensive. It's expensive financially, individual people resources. It's oftentimes not very fun for people either, right? And when we get into the relationships and knowing individuals in their individual context, it will naturally build better relationships, which will also lead to more retention.
More retention and really good optics, because how wonderful is that when stories get out that a certain company is flexing to the needs of the people we care so much about, that do so much for our organization, but hey, we can flex a little for their family situations. Now, I do think there are some employees that definitely violate that good faith, so we have to always be vigilant for that.
Yes, absolutely. And there's a level of intentionality, there's a level of authenticity that comes to this, right? Where you really want to build relationships, know the individual situations that are happening. And as you start to build that rapport, again, with intentionality, because it ain't necessarily easy. I'll make that. And then you will start to not only draw the connection with the individuals, but those individuals will be more connected to your organization too.
How does that play out in this relationship space when it comes to actual policies? Because I'm guessing you're advising some of your clients on employee handbooks and the proper policies to put in place for any kind of hybrid or work from home policy.
Yeah. I think what's important to be thinking about is how we can create policies that will allow for fair, merit-based evaluation regardless of where you work. So regardless if you're at home or if you're in the office. I'd say this is a policy thing, but also there's a brain training piece of it too. So there's training and development that comes into this too, right? So I frequently talk about something called affiliation bias. First of all, let me back up and say this. We build relationships based on affiliations. You meet somebody, you have something in common, you build a relationship. Probably don't want to hang out with people that you have no affiliations with. That would probably be a little bit boring. Affiliation bias is when we start to evaluate people more based on our affiliations than the merit of their behavior. Good example is if you have somebody working remote where you're not walking by their desk or moving past their desk on a day-to-day basis, you're not having what they call the water cooler talk, right, and talking about your weekends and what have you. When it comes time for evaluation, when it comes time for raises, when it comes time for promotions, have you trained your brain to say, I need to think about everybody, no matter where they work, whether I like them or not, and be able to evaluate them. And there's policies that you can put in place that can also help you. And so it's a brain training, if you will, and then it's also complemented with policies that we can have that allow us to do that more fairly.
So train the brain and then codify it into your policies. So there's fairness, there's something everyone can read, and it's actually then a commitment by the company to treat its people in that fair way. I love it. Okay, let's talk about your third pillar in this workplace balance scenario, consideration. And I love that line, seat at the table. Seat at the table, it means so much to many people. Some people don't get it at all because maybe they haven't had to worry about it. What do you mean when you talk about the seat at the table?
It is sometimes very figuratively, right? You're literally in the room at a conference table or wherever, you have the seat and you have the ability to speak, right? And people are going to take you seriously and listen to you. In other instances, it's a bit more metaphorically, right? So perhaps it is I have a relationship with somebody who is senior to me and they value my input. And so then I can, almost as a conduit, I can give input and they will take it to whomever is at the table. In the case of remote work, it can work in both instances where if you're not there physically and people aren't thinking about you, you lose your seat at the table. But in other instances where you have access to people, you can jump on a 15-minute Zoom or Teams meeting or whatever. You have the opportunity to write messages in Slack on the side as and be in the conversation, sometimes live as it's happening, is a new opportunity for people to be at the table. If you're in a big meeting room and you want to, give a nudge to your supervisor or whomever is going to have the opportunity to speak, and you pull out your phone and start texting, and they go look at their text in the middle of the meeting, everybody's going to be like, why are these people texting? Versus when you're remote, you jump on the chat and you can send a quick message, boom, somebody has the opportunity to say it. Even in my work, when we went virtual and I'm doing, sometimes thousands of people, I'll say, hey, the chat is open. You can send me a direct message if you don't want to say something in front of people. Send it directly to me.
Private message.
So now that seat at the table, the metaphorical seat at the table, is completely shifting.
That's really an important nuance to that term, which is, I think, such a strong term because it's so simple and it says a lot. And now you've helped us understand why it says even more. Over and over, we have seen the narrative shift, mostly for the better, when it comes to mental health awareness, how important it is to give that support in the workplace. What are you seeing and what should we be considering in this space?
When we think about this from an inclusion standpoint, which in many ways is what I am trying to get across in this conversation, right? That I don't care where you're at. We need to be leading with inclusion, right? And we need to be thinking about how we can get people to feel included, to feel like they belong within the workplaces and well beyond that. But in this case in particular, when we're thinking about mental health, when we're thinking about the sort of things that wear people down in the workplace, right? We've talked about affiliation bias a minute ago. We've talked about microaggressions and things like that. People are actively opting, given all these other things that we're talking about. They might be passed up for a promotion because they weren't face-to-face with somebody. They might not get as much of a raise because they weren't face-to-face. They're still saying, I am more comfortable at home, even though I know it might hurt my bottom line, it might hurt my promotion, because that mental drain that they've had in situations where they were not included is wearing on them. So when we're working from home, just generally speaking, people have the opportunity, if they're able to move around, go for a walk. Or just move around, period, right?
Leave the desk.
Yes, exactly, right? Maybe they throw a load of laundry in between meetings, right? And then they're switching them to the dryer. Something you can't do when you're in the office. So then later on, it frees up your time for whomever it is that you want to spend your time with.
And that stress is gone.
Exactly. I have a pull-up bar in my closet, just one of those little cheap ones, right? And in between meetings, I might go do 10 pull-ups. I can't do more than 10.
Bar. So let's be really clear. This does not involve alcohol.
No.
Because that's exactly where my mind went. And I don't think we should be suggesting martinis in between the Zoom meetings.
That never even crossed my mind. No, an actual physical pull-up bar.
Better and healthier for you.
Yes. And so I might do my 10 pull-ups because 12 is too many, right? But
10 is too many for some of us, but I applaud you.
We're getting some.
You do your pull-ups, and that physical movement actually helps your brain.
Exactly.
And can relieve some tension.
Exactly.
Can help with mental health.
Right. Release the serotonin, all those things, right? If I found a rail in the office and started doing pull-ups, people would probably have some questions for me.
Now, though, I think, this could be a really good piece of advice from the Crisis Files right here. You heard it here. And perhaps you should try to buy stock in pull-up bar companies because I think we're gonna have an uptick in how many people want those in their offices. We get the point, whatever that is. Even taking the dog for the walk.
Exactly.
Which the dog needs the walk. And often we need that walk. It's amazing how much gets released, even in a 5-minute walk with the dog. So I always like to get the state of affairs, kind of the state of the state from you whenever you come in, Abdul. And there's been a lot of flux and change, and employers are asking for things, employees are asking for things. As we sit here at the quarter century mark of the 21st century, what would you say is the state of the workplace and inclusion? Are you hopeful?
This is hopeful work. And so I have to remain hopeful in the knowledge that I don't know exactly where things will go or how things will go. What has been consistent, I would say, over the last 3 years is you are finding more organizations who either have previously said they believe in the work in creating more inclusive and belonging workplaces, who are continuing to double down, triple down, and say this is what we need to do. At the same time, you have seen other organizations, for a variety of reasons, some would say illegitimate, some would say actual, yes, calculated risk, you should make these moves. And those are organizations who are backing away from at least public, right, or outward-facing initiatives, offices, or departments and divisions that are focused in this work. And ultimately, here's my hopeful piece. I don't care what you call it. I just hope you do it.
That's a good line, because we know it when it's there. We know an inclusive workplace that allows everyone to thrive, gives everyone a chance to really showcase their expertise, their brain power, their talents. We know it when we see it, and that it's good culture. And that term culture has really popped up over the last decade, I'd say. And you know when you're in a good work culture. Not everyone wins awards for it, but you know when you're there. I will stay hopeful with you, Dr. Omari, and we will continue to raise your voice on the Crisis Files and highlight things you're doing out in the world, because it is important that people feel included first, feel that they have a seat at the table so they can step up and share their brain power, share their talents. And ultimately, it means more profit. It means just better mental health. It means so many good things. And that's something that, whether it's nonprofit, for-profit, university environments, athletic environments, all can thrive with that kind of an attitude. Well, we wish you the best and hope as you move forward, and because I know you're taking on a lot of things. As always, you give us so much to ponder and act on. Find out more about Abdul and his services at abdulomari.com. This case file is powered by Asset HR. Are you seeking more personalized attention than what large payroll companies offer? Asset HR prioritizes your business as if it were their own. They don't just create partnerships, they foster lasting relationships. Imagine a world where your needs are anticipated, every call is promptly answered, and you receive the attention you deserve. Choose Asset HR and experience a human resources partnership where relationships are paramount. Learn more at assethr.com. Follow the show on YouTube and Instagram at The Crisis Files. Rate, review, and subscribe to The Crisis Files on your platform of choice. Check out our website, thecrisisfiles.com, to catch up on all case files and to share ideas for future case files. I'm Roshini Rajkumar. Join me next time on The Crisis Files.